What is going on, y'all? This is Pay Me in Dividends, and today's October 1st, 2025. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, I talk about investing into the stock market and ways to generate income through the stock market. All right, so in this video, I want to talk about WPAY. All right, ticker symbol WPAY from Round Hill ETFs. And this is a very interesting ETF. It is brand new. It's only been out for about a month now. If we go down here to the inception date, you can see that it was released on September 4th of 2025. So again, very new, very fresh on the market. But at first glance, you can see that the dividend yield is 85%. We'll get to the distributions here in a moment, but I just want to give you a rundown on what this ETF offers and how it's constructed. All right, so pretty much what this is Round Hill has a suite of single stock ETFs. These ETFs do have some leverage, which means that you are getting upside. You are getting a bigger upside than the underlying company itself, but just remember that it works both ways. All right, so when the stock goes down in value, the underlying stock goes down in value, for example, let's say Apple, then it will go down even more because this is leveraged. So that's just something to keep in mind. But let's look at the holdings. All right, so the holdings on WPAY, if we go here to holdings on the website, we can see that it includes all of these single stock ETFs from Round Hill, which is amazing, right? They have all of these great companies included into this one ETF. So it takes the pressure off of you having to pick a single company, and you're able to invest into all of these companies in one ETF. All right, now you're not investing directly into the company, right? You're not buying Apple or Google or Coinbase directly, but you are getting exposure to it because these single stock ETFs themselves do have a portion of shares of that company within that ETF. It is not a completely synthetic ETF, all right, which we're going to compare it to one here towards the end of the video. All right, so these are the holdings as of now. They have Apple, AMD, Amazon, Broadcom, Berkshire, Coinbase, Google. You guys can see on my screen here, right? You guys can see all of these big name companies, and pretty much what they do is they generate option income, right? Option premium, and then that's how they're able to pay that dividend. Now, keep in mind that this one does pay on a weekly basis, right? Obviously, the name of the ETF is Weekly Pay Universe ETF, which is great for people who are seeking income and also looking for a way to compound their money even quicker, right? You're not getting a dividend on a quarterly basis or even a monthly basis, but you're getting it on a weekly basis, which I think is pretty cool. And it's crazy how all of these products have been coming out recently over the past year or so that are now paying on a weekly basis, and there's so many different ETF managers now jumping into this, trying to compete with each other, which I think really benefits us as retail investors, because these ETF managers now have to keep up with the competition, and so they have to find ways to be innovative. They have to find ways to make sure that the share price remains stable, or ideally goes up with the market, and also generates that income. All right, so let's go down to the distributions. Again, this ETF is very new, so we don't have much history on dividend payouts. According to their website, they've only paid 3 so far. Now you'll notice the first 2 payments were about 50 cents, right? The first one was 54 cents. The second one was 51 cents. Now their most recent payment, which was paid today, October 1st, is 88 cents. Now I'm not quite sure if they just generated more premium or if this is some sort of a marketing tactic to kind of draw new investors into it because it's such a new ETF. But I am interested to see what the dividend payouts will be moving forward, if this will kind of find its footing and have a consistent payout, or if it's going to fluctuate. Personally, I would like to see something a bit more consistent before putting my money into it, because I really like the consistency of payouts, because you're able to predict about how much income you're going to make on a monthly basis. But either way, they began paying out, very short history, only 3 payments, so we still have some time to see exactly how this thing will perform. But so far so good. All right, if we go over here to the chart, we'll just look at the 1 month chart, and we can see that it is up 4.76%. Now let's compare that to the S&P, which is up 4.31% over the past month. All right, so it has slightly outperformed the S&P 500 in the past month. Again, very, very short window, time frame, right? I'd like to see at least 6 months to a year or more of history, so that we have enough data to make a proper analysis to decide whether or not we want to include this into our portfolio. But so far so good. I do like Roundhill. I feel like out of all of the high yield ETF managers, they are one of the best, if not the best, with managing share price stability, which I think is important for the long run, especially if you're an income investor. Yes, you want to generate income, but you also don't want to see your principal erode over time. All right, so I think Roundhill does a great job at that. And one of the things I noticed here on their overview is it says WPAY is rebalanced monthly to equal weight, ensuring consistent exposure to all single stock weekly pay ETFs in a single ticker. Now, this can be a good or bad thing, right? It can be a good thing because now you're equally weighted between all of these companies that are included in this ETF. All right. Now, the downside can come where, if one ETF is really, really outperforming, or let's say 5 of them are really outperforming, and 5 of them are really underperforming the broad market, they're still going to be evenly weighted because of the way that the ETF is structured, according to their website. So it can be a good or bad thing, but I think either way, having that equal weight overall, probably over time, is a good thing, because your highs will never be too high, your lows will never be too low. So again, I'm really, really interested to see how this plays out moving into the future. And here, just very quickly, I want to show you guys a comparison to YMAX. All right, so YMAX from YieldMax is up around 1.5% over the past month, right? Which is much less than WPAY. Now, YMAX, the reason I'm comparing it to YMAX also has a much lower yield right now. But the reason I'm comparing it to YMAX is because YMAX has the same strategy in a sense, right? So it's an ETF, and the underlying assets are all of the single stock ETFs from YieldMax. So it's very similar in that way. The only thing about YMAX is, if you look at the history, right? If you look at the chart dating back all the way to January of 2024, which means that we have a good amount of history now, right? We're coming up on 2 years that this fund has been out, and we can see this chart, right? The share price has gone down a lot, around 36% since inception. And so my only concern is seeing that same thing play out for WPAY. I think this one will be managed a lot better because it has some leverage, so it's able to really hit some all-time highs when the underlying stocks go up. And they also hold a portion of shares within the single stock ETFs, right, that are in WPAY, where YMAX, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe YMAX, or all of the single stock ETFs within YMAX, are mostly synthetic options, meaning that most of these or all of these do not actually hold any of the underlying shares. It's all synthetic options, which can really destroy the share price over time. All right, so I'm really interested to see how this thing plays out. I want to keep an eye on it at least for the rest of this year, see how it performs through the rest of 2025. As you guys know, if you guys watch my channel, I did switch most of my portfolio into growth SPMO ETF to be exact. I still do hold BTCI for some Bitcoin exposure in my stock portfolio and some monthly income, but I am looking to jump back into high yield income ETFs, but strategically. All right, so one thing I want to remind you guys of is when it comes to these high yield ETFs, it's really about the price point that you get in. All right, so I'm looking at WPAY right now. The 52-week low is around $50.30, right? So just in the past month. And if this ETF drops below $50, I think I may start a position in it. And the thing is, when the entire market index drops, I can see this dropping hard because of that leverage. All right, so I do see this ETF dropping below $50 at some point. It may shoot over $60, who knows, right? But I think it will at some point drop under $50. And when it does, I think that's when I will make my entry. So just keep that in mind. It is very important on when your entry point is for these high yield ETFs, especially the ones that have leverage, because they can swing heavily on a day-to-day basis. All right, so I just wanted to go over WPAY. It's a new ETF from Roundhill. It pays weekly. It is diversified, right? So you're not just counting on one single company. And I think moving forward, it'll look good. All right, so there's a lot of money coming into it. There's already over $123 million of assets under management, right? So it's hit, that 100+ million mark fairly quickly since inception. So I can see this ETF being a main staple in an income portfolio, and it is definitely on my watch list. And I'm very excited that they came out with this thing because I really liked these single stock ETFs from Roundhill. I just was a bit reluctant on jumping into any of them because I don't want to bet on any one single company. But now that they have WPAY that includes all of these, I feel a bit more comfortable putting my money into it because of that diversification. All right, so you guys let me know in the comments, what do you think about WPAY? Do you think it will outperform YMAX moving forward? And is it something that you're looking at investing into? All right, so as always, I appreciate you guys stopping by the channel, and I will catch you in the next video.